Have you ever noticed how the most complex psychological truths about human nature, they don't actually come from modern textbooks. They
Right.
come from century-old fiction. I mean, we spend so much time analyzing our modern anxieties, but it's just fascinating how a story written generations ago can hold up a perfect mirror to the exact things we are struggling with today.
Oh, absolutely.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring a curated stack of excerpts from Mansarovar Part 1, which is this legendary collection of short stories by the iconic Indian author Munshi Premchand.
A true master of the form.
He really is. And to set the stage for you listening right now, our source material actually includes this really striking visual context. It's a classic portrait of Premchand himself.
Yeah, that image really stays with you.
It does. He's got that distinct, thick mustache, incredibly simple attire, and these deeply observant eyes. And in the materials, this portrait is set against the snowy peaks of Lake Mansarovar. It's a quiet image, but it really hints at the depth of what we're about to get into.
It's the perfect visual metaphor, honestly, because the surface of Lake Mansarovar might look perfectly still, right?
Yeah.
But underneath, the waters are incredibly deep. They hold immense pressure. And that's exactly what Premchand does with his writing.
Exactly.
He presents these seemingly simple, rural, or everyday vignettes, but the undercurrents are just profoundly complex. He's dealing with the raw, mechanical realities of human survival and societal structures.
And that brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We're going to extract the timeless insights from these stories. We'll be looking at the psychological weight of poverty, the rigid traps of gender roles, the heartbreak of generational betrayal, and the deeply revealing hypocrisy of human perception.
There's a lot to cover.
There is. Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the crushing reality of poverty and how it forces a very specific kind of psychological defense mechanism. The sources start with the story of Idgah. And this centers on a young, severely impoverished boy named Hamid at an Eid fair.
Hamid is one of those literary figures who just anchors himself in your mind.
For sure.
The setting is crucial here. An Eid fair is, it's the ultimate place of temptation for a child. It's loud, it's colorful, and it's built entirely around consumption.
Right, and we know Hamid's friends are doing exactly what kids do. They're spending their pocket money on fleeting things.
Sugary sweets.
Yes, sugary sweets, fragile clay toys. But Hamid, who only has 3 meager pays, he bypasses all of that. He stops at a hardware stall and he buys a chimta.
A pair of iron cooking tongs.
Exactly. Now, on the surface, he buys them because his grandmother, Amina, she keeps braining her hands cooking rodis over an open fire.
Which is heartbreaking in itself.
It is. But what strikes me isn't just the purchase itself, it's how he defends it. When his friends mock him for bringing a literal kitchen tool to a festival, he doesn't cower.
No, he doubles down.
He does. He uses his imagination to elevate these mundane tongs into an invincible warrior that could just smash their clay toys to pieces.
What's fascinating here is how Premchand illustrates the dual nature of childhood under extreme poverty. Poverty forces a premature maturity onto Hamid. He has to think like an adult. He's prioritizing his grandmother's physical safety over his own momentary joy.
Right.
But at the same time, his imagination acts as a psychological shield. By transforming the harsh reality of his deprivation into a game he can win, he makes the tongs magical. He doesn't have to feel poor in that moment.
He feels victorious.
Exactly. He weaponizes his innocence to survive the humiliation of poverty.
It's a brilliant coping mechanism. But Premchand doesn't just show us the coping mechanisms of children. He also shows us what happens when an adult's psychological shield completely shatters.
This is where it gets really dark.
Yeah, that brings us to Poos Ki Raat, or A Dark Winter Night.
Yeah.
We're introduced to Halku, a severely indebted farmer. He's freezing in a field with his dog Jabra, trying to guard his crop under a threadbare blanket.
The sensory details in this excerpt are suffocating. You practically feel the cold in your own bones reading it.
You really do.
Halku is reduced to his most primal instincts. He's pulling his knees to his chest, he's bringing the dog close just for shared body heat, and eventually lighting a small fire from dry leaves just to stop his blood from freezing.
And then we get this profound twist. While he's sitting by the warm ashes of his makeshift fire, a herd of Nilgai's blue bulls invades his field.
Yeah.
He hears them crunching and destroying the harvest. And this crop is his entire livelihood. It's his only way out of crushing debt. But instead of chasing them away, Halku just sits by the ashes and lets the destruction happen.
It just lets it happen.
I mean, on a rational level, it seems insane. Why would someone let their future be eaten right in front of them?
Because rationality is a luxury you lose when your baseline of existence is unbearable. It's a profound psychological breaking point.
Right.
The next morning, his wife is looking at the ruined field in absolute despair. But Halku tells her that at least he won't have to sleep out in the freezing cold anymore. We often think of the loss of a livelihood as the ultimate tragedy. But Premchand shows you a state of deprivation so severe that the ruin of your future is actually a physical relief in the present.
That is so bleak.
The immediate biological need to just be warm completely overrides the abstract concept of financial security.
It's like a 19th century version of absolute burnout. The pressure of the debt, the feudal system, the literal elements, it's all so heavy that the collapse of his livelihood is actually liberating. Surrendering to the inevitable is easier than fighting another day.
Exactly. The system is rigged anyway. The crop would have just gone to the moneylender. By letting the bulls eat it, Halku reclaims one tiny piece of agency, the choice to stay warm for one night.
Halku surrendering his livelihood is a quiet, desperate kind of surrender. But Premch doesn't just show us the surrender of physical survival. He digs deep into emotional and generational surrender, too.
Yes.
The sources take us into the tragedy of maternal sacrifice with the story Ma, or Mother. We follow Karuna, whose husband Aditya returns from political imprisonment a broken man and soon dies.
And Karuna takes all her grief and funnels it entirely into raising their son Prakash. Her whole life becomes a monument to her late husband's ideals, and she expects Prakash to carry on that selfless, nationalistic legacy.
But Prakash turns out to be the exact opposite. He's obsessed with Western fashion, status, material wealth. He views his father's sacrifices as pointless, and the climax of this betrayal is devastating.
It really is.
Karuna is sunning her late husband's sacred mementos, including his old khadi clothes. Prakash comes along and literally throws them in the trash, calling them garbage. Now, the text mentions khadi, but for those who might not immediately connect the historical dots, we really need to emphasize what that fabric means here.
It's the crux of the entire conflict. Khadi wasn't just a type of cotton. It was the literal fabric of the Indian independence movement. It was the Swadeshi movement's symbol of anti-colonial self-reliance and resistance against British economic dominance.
Okay, so it's deeply political.
Hugely political. When Prakash throws those clothes away, he isn't just rejecting his dad's outdated wardrobe. He's actively tossing out the entire ideological struggle and suffering of his parents' generation in favor of the very Western aesthetics his father fought against.
It's a complete erasure of her reality. And it kills her. She essentially dies of a broken heart, realizing the son she sacrificed everything for places zero value on her life's meaning.
Yeah.
But I want to push back on this a little bit. If Karuna raised Prakash with such absolute devotion, how does Premchand explain him turning out this way? Is it just a story about a bad, ungrateful son?
That's the tragic irony Premchand is highlighting. It's not just about an ungrateful child. It's about a rapidly changing world where the currency of value has shifted.
Oh, interesting.
Karuna raised him with the currency of moral sacrifice, but the society Prakash is entering only rewards material wealth and colonial assimilation. The tragedy is that her love wasn't enough to insulate him from the corrupting influence of the broader social machinery.
If we connect this to the bigger picture within the source material, Karuna's story shares a lot of DNA with another excerpt we have, Betanwali Vidhava, or The Widow with Sons.
Yes, the parallels are striking.
This focuses on Fulmati. While Karuna is destroyed by her son's ideological betrayal, Fulmati is destroyed by a purely structural betrayal the absolute second her husband dies.
Right. While her husband, the Pandit, was alive, Fulmati was the respected matriarch. She held power.
Yeah.
But the absolute second he dies, her 4 sons usurp total control of the house. They completely sideline her, mismanage the family finances, and ruin her daughter Kumud's dowry arrangements.
But again, there's a paradox here. Fulmati's the one who raised these 4 men. She was the matriarch. How does she lose power so instantly to the children she shaped?
Because her power was never actually hers.
What do you mean?
Premchand is delivering a fierce critique of how patriarchy infects the family unit. Fulmati's authority was entirely tethered to her husband's existence. It was delegated power. In this rigid society, a woman's value didn't exist in a vacuum. It only existed in relation to the man she belonged to.
Whoa.
The sons don't strip her of her power because they necessarily hate her. They do it because the system dictates that power transfers linearly to the males. Even her own children become her systemic oppressors. She descends into apathy and eventually falls from a train to her death.
A literal and metaphorical casting out from the journey of life.
Precisely.
It's a really bleak look at how vulnerable these women were. The society had fundamentally rigged the game against them. But here's where it gets really interesting. Premchand doesn't just paint women as these passive victims waiting to be crushed by the patriarchy.
Not at all.
The sources show us incredible moments of women completely defying the boundaries set for them. Let's look at the story called Shikar, or The Hunt.
This is such a refreshing shift in tone. We meet Vasudha, a woman living in immense wealth but profound emotional neglect. Her husband, Kunwar, essentially ignores her to spend all his time obsessively hunting in the jungle.
Instead of accepting her lot as the weeping, neglected wife, Vasudha invades his world. She demands to learn how to shoot. She forces her way onto a highly dangerous tiger hunt.
She just invites herself.
Exactly. And Premchand puts them in a terrifying scenario. Sitting on a high platform at night, waiting for a man-eater. The tiger manages to leap onto their platform. Kunwar, the great masculine hunter, drops his gun in the chaos. He's defenseless.
He completely panics.
He does. And it's Vasudha who steps up. She doesn't scream or faint. She shoves her revolver directly into the tiger's open mouth and fires, saving her husband's life.
The subversion here is massive. The colonial-era tiger hunt was the ultimate hyper-masculine space. It was about conquering nature, asserting dominance, and projecting colonial or feudal power.
Right, it was a whole status thing.
Exactly. By placing a neglected housewife in that space and having her be the savior when the male authority figure completely fails, Premchand is dismantling the myth of inherent male superiority. Vasudha doesn't just save his life. She forces him to respect her on his own turf.
It's an incredible power move, and it pairs so well with another epic narrative from the texts, the story of Timur and Habib.
Oh, this one is fantastic.
Timur, as we know from history, is a terrifying conqueror, a warlord known for massive, ruthless bloodshed. But in this story, a young soldier named Habib stands right in front of him and challenges him.
Habib is completely fearless. While seasoned generals are shaking in their boots, Habib asks Timur directly if shedding the blood of innocence is actually serving God, or if it's just a convenient excuse for his own cruelty.
Nobody speaks to a warlord like that and lives.
No one.
But Timur is so struck by the absolute truth and courage of these words that he makes Habib his chief advisor. And then we get the massive reveal.
The twist.
Yes. Timur discovers that this brilliant, fearless soldier is actually a woman, Umutul Habib. He's so captivated by her intellect and moral clarity that he marries her, making her the queen of his empire and, more importantly, his moral compass.
When you synthesize these two narratives, Vasudha and Habib, you see exactly what Premchand was trying to do. He takes these women and drops them into the most aggressive, hyper-masculine arenas imaginable, the deadly wilderness and a warlord's bloody court.
Yeah.
And they don't just blend in, they conquer. But they don't conquer through brute force. They conquer through unmatched courage and moral clarity. They recalibrate the men around them. Vasudha forces her husband to recognize her equality, and Habib literally alters the moral trajectory of a world conqueror.
Premchand is arguing that true moral and practical authority is not bound by gender. It's such a vital counter-narrative to the tragic stories we discussed earlier. Now, I want to pivot from these grand life-and-death stakes to something much smaller in scale, but incredibly revealing about how our minds work. The sources highlight a vignette called Manovritti, which translates to mentality. Picture this scene. It's early morning in a public city park, and right there, fast asleep on a bench, is a beautiful young woman.
Which, in the context of this specific era and society, is a highly provocative sight. A respectable woman simply wouldn't be found sleeping on a park bench at dawn. It disrupts the social order.
Exactly. And because she disrupts the order, she draws attention. The entire story is just a series of hilarious, deeply revealing reactions from the men who walk past her. First, two young, athletic men, Vasant and Hashim, walk by.
And they immediately start debating her morals.
Right. One assumes she must be a runaway bride fleeing a tragic marriage. The other absolutely insists she's a shameless prostitute. They project this entire dramatic soap opera backstory onto her based on nothing but her physical presence.
It's the classic Madonna whore complex playing out in real time. They can't just see a tired person. They have to categorize her based on their own obsession with female morality.
But then the perspective shifts. Two elderly men walk by, a lawyer and a doctor.
And their reaction is totally different, but just as absurd. They see her and immediately start lusting after her. But that lust quickly turns inward, and they start mourning their own lost youth.
They literally start discussing medical procedures to regain their vitality so they could potentially woo a woman like her. And the text specifically mentions them discussing monkey gland treatments.
Yes, and we have to pause on that because the historical context is wild. In the 1920s and 30s, there was a real-world medical fad pioneered by a doctor named Serge Voronov. Wealthy, aging men were getting monkey testicular tissue grafted onto themselves to supposedly restore their virility.
That is insane.
It was a huge cultural phenomenon. Premchand includes this detail to show just how pathetic and vain these older men are. They're standing over a sleeping woman, completely ignoring her humanity, to lament their own aging bodies and discuss bizarre pseudoscience.
This raises an important question about the nature of perception itself. What's brilliant about this story is that the sleeping woman does absolutely nothing. She has no dialogue, she's unconscious, yet she acts as a flawless psychological mirror.
A total blank slate.
Exactly. Every single character who walks past projects their own insecurities, their own biases, and their own repressed desires onto her silent form. The young men project their obsession with purity and drama. The older men project their fear of mortality and lost virility. They aren't seeing her at all. They're just seeing themselves.
It's an absolute masterclass in exposing the male gaze. But on a broader level, it's about the hypocrisy of societal judgment. Premchand is showing us that when society is quick to judge, those judgments are almost always confessions of the judge's own internal baggage.
You know, it's exactly what happens on social media today. You see a 5-second clip of a stranger online, and instantly the comment section projects an entire psychological profile onto them.
Oh, constantly.
People invent whole narratives about a stranger's politics, their parenting, their morals, just based on a snippet. Premchand was basically describing the mechanics of internet outrage a century before the internet even existed. We just assign narratives to people because we can't handle a blank slate.
Precisely. We carry our frameworks with us everywhere, and we force everyone we meet to fit inside them.
Okay, let's take a breath and look back at the immense ground we've covered in this deep dive. We started in the biting cold of rural fields, unpacking the devastating psychology of poverty, watching Halku surrender his livelihood just for a moment of relief, and seeing young Hamid use his imagination as a shield.
We moved through oppressive households where maternal sacrifice was met with generational and systemic betrayal, watching women like Karuna and Fulmati be erased by the very structures they upheld.
But we also ventured into the dangerous jungles and royal courts to witness the fierce agency of women like Vasuda and Habib.
Women who refused the victim narrative and actively conquered hypermasculine spaces.
And finally, we ended up in a city park, looking into the revealing psychological mirrors of human perception.
It's been an incredible journey through Premchand's world.
It really has. And now I want to turn this over to you, listening right now. Think about the themes we've uncovered today. Have you ever had a chimta moment in your own life? A quiet moment of profound sacrifice where you bypassed a fleeting pleasure for something deeply meaningful to someone else?
Or on the flip side, be brutally honest. Have you projected your own Manovritti, your own mentality and biases, onto a total stranger you encountered recently? Did you invent a whole story about them just based on how they looked or dressed?
It's a very confronting thing to realize how often we do exactly what those men in the park did. We are all wearing lenses colored by our own experiences, and it takes active work to take them off.
It definitely does.
So, what does this all mean? We've seen how Premchand's characters were heavily trapped by the rigid rules of their era, whether it was the crushing weight of colonial poverty or the suffocating grip of patriarchy. But we've spent all this time talking about how these century-old characters mirror our struggles today.
Because human nature hasn't changed.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, what are the invisible social scripts we're blindly following right now? 100 years from now, when someone reads the literature of our time, what mundane, everyday thing will future readers look back on and realize was actually our era's version of a silent, oppressive prison?
That is a fascinating thought.
Keep questioning the societal scripts you live by, because just like Halku in the freezing field, sometimes the hardest thing to see is the cage you're already sitting in.